Be in 5th grade. Be in AI class. It's like advanced shit for smart kids. The teachers decide it's a good idea for us to spend a day with the tard kids because we were ahead of schedule for the marking period. I had never seen a tard previous to this encounter, so I did not know what to expect. Walk into the tard HQ. It seems to be a regular classroom filled with ugly-ass kids. Everybody is assigned their own personal tard to talk to. I get assigned Neal. I walk up to the tard and say, "Hello, I'm Phil."
"Hey, Pill."
One fluent word, "Hey, Pill." He says this whenever he is within 30 feet of me, and it becomes my only warning of the inevitable oncoming shitstorm. Sit down and see he is cutting paper. Ask him what he's making.
"Rhymes."
What? The tard starts to make this screeching sound. The only thing I can compare it to is the sound of a fucking raptor. A fat downy tard runs up to us.
"Stop it!"
Neal gets up and continues his rap tard roar directly in her face. Downy tard goes batshit, engages tard strength, and flips the entire table over. Neal not only continues his tard roar, but moves closer to the downy child. Down kid just starts screaming and tries to run for the door, forgets to open it, and smashes into it head first. K.O. Neal silences his roar, sits down and continues cutting the paper as if nothing had happened. All my what.jpg. Tard wranglers run in and retrieve Neal and the downy child. They are both sent home. And that, my friends, is the first of my many stories of Neal. Just tell me if you want more. After our first fateful encounter, I hadn't seen Neal for a while, so this story takes place about 3 months after my previous story. Be walking down the hall with friends to lunch, talking about usual 5th grade shit, Pokemon and whatnot. Hear a faint yet memorable voice.
"Hey, Pill."
Don't answer, pretend I heard nothing due to the events of last time. Hear the sound yet again, except this time directly in my ear.
"Hey, Pill."
He had just appeared at my side. He had to be at least 30 or so feet in the other direction previously. This speed will come into play in later encounters. Wave awkwardly to him. "Hey, Neal." He extends a bag of Cheetos he had in his hand in my direction.
"You want some?"
"No thanks, Neal." My friend, not knowing the kind of devastation Neal is capable of, reaches over and grabs one of the Cheetos out of the bag without asking. Neal looks up with pure malice. Oh fuck, not again. Approaches my friend deliberately, looking into his eyes. Engage Raptard roar. This one was in short bursts. It appears as if he has different roars for different situations. Friend says, "What's wrong with him?" Say nothing, as I do not want to feel Neal's wrath. Friend backs away as Neal approaches, chewing the Cheeto. Neal lets out one last violent tard roar and hurls himself at my friend, knocking him over. He jams his hand into my friend's mouth and retrieves the liquidy remnants of the Cheeto, while continuing his tard roar directly in his face. Stands up and eats liquidy, half-eaten Cheeto after silencing his roar. Tard Wrangler comes speeding down the hallway and grabs Neal by the wrist to pull him back to Tard HQ. Waves at me.
"Bye, Pill."
Not a single ounce of regret or any emotion, for that matter, in his eyes. I wave at him in utter awe. "Bye, Neal. You guys want more?" Neal, Part 3. Battle of the Tards. You see, Neal mainly kept to himself. He did not like his tard kind, but he had an extreme dislike for one tard named James. This is the first of their battles that I saw. Be in 6th grade now. New AI teacher is a very avid tard supporter. We are now going to help the tards out once a week for the entire year. I enter the tard HQ and see Neal sitting in the corner. Hasn't grown an inch since last year. Turns out he will remain 5'0" for his entire life. He looks as if he is in total concentration reading a book. I walk up to Neal. "Hey bud, what you reading?" He gives me one of those toothy tard grins.
"Hey, Pill."
Sit next to him and look at the book. Dr. Seuss's A Cat in the Hat. A tall, skinny kid walks over towards us. I could tell that he was a dick from the second I saw him.
What are you reading, Neal?
Snatches book out of Neal's hand.
This book is for babies.
Nick gets up.
Give it back, James.
James holds it above his head.
Take it.
Neal's rage is apparent. It is that of 1,000 suns. Neal sounds his raptard screech. This is slightly different from his roar. Its sole effect is to piss off other tards.
Stupid Neal, take your dumb book.
Too late for that, bud. Neal continues to approach, with his fist above his head as far as he can reach. Screech continues. At this point, Tard HQ is compromised. Tards are going crazy. Crayons and shit are being thrown. One tard is curled into a ball in a puddle of piss. AI class is told to evacuate. I stay to watch the imminent lulls. James is now clenching his ears for dear life. Neal is finally within striking distance of James. He throws his mighty fist down into James's nuts with the accumulative force of 1,000 banhammers. James drops and begins to throw up onto the magic carpet. Neal silences the screech, picks up the book James had stolen from him, and sits down to read it directly in James's pile of throw-up. But why, .jpg? He looks up at me with that toothy grin as I just stare. Tard wranglers bust in. One grabs me to bring me to safety. The others grab the debilitated James and Neal. Neal screams after me,
Bye, Neal!
I just watch as he is hauled off to the principal's office, not giving a single bit of resistance. That day was known as End Day up until I left for the high school. Neal Part 3. Be in second marking period now. Neal has been suspended for pulverizing James's nuts. He's back now. I have started to look forward to our days helping the Tards just because of Neal. Unfortunately, it's not that day. Be in art class. Teacher says we have a Tard coming to our class from now on because the school has started a new integration program for Tards. Neal walks through the fucking door. Class, this is Neal. Hello, Neal, we say in unison as I waved.
Hey, pal.
Teacher lets him sit next to me because he knows me. James walks into class after him. Oh shit, nigger.jpg. James is introduced to class and is put at the same table as us just by luck. We are starting watercolor painting right now. Neal decides he wants to paint an apple because that's what I was painting. James starts shit with us because he's a dick.
Your apples look like shit.
Neal ignores him because he's fucking Neal and he doesn't give a fuck. James, obviously angered by being ignored by me and Neal, pours all of his paint onto my painting. Don't give a fuck, but Neal sure as hell did. Commence Raptard Roar short burst mode. This is when I found out that the short bursts mean he's about to wreck shit. Neal throws all his paint right into James's eyes as the class looks on with horror.
My eyes!
James can't see shit, and Neal has taken out Skittles that I assume he had hidden in the foreskin of his penis. I found out he's uncircumcised in a later incident, and begins pelting James with them. He's hurling these at Mach 5 speeds into him. James falls off the stool he's sitting on and brings the girl sitting next to him along too. Neal walks around the table, picks up the paint and slowly empties it onto both James and the girl. It is apparent that Neal does not give two shits about civilian casualties. The roar has stopped. Kids are all huddled into the corner aside from me, the two Tards, and the poor girl caught in the mix. Teachers signal for Tard wranglers outside. James and Neal are picked up and taken from the classroom. Neal is in complete and utter peace while being carried away. He simply waves at me.
Bye, pal.
And that was the end of the school's integration program after the girl who got wrecked's parents attempted to sue the school. Neal, the story of the lightning raptard. Be in 7th grade now. Haven't seen Neal in over a year. He and his parents had moved to a different school district, possibly due to the previously mentioned problems with this one. Be in the 3rd marking period. It's okay, not the same without Neal though. Walking down the hall one day, lo and behold, Neal is walking down the hall, all 5 feet of him. Run up to him. Hey Neal, you coming back to school again?
Hey, pal.
He now has his own personal tard wrangler at all times except for lunch, who explains everything to me. Unfortunately, I have no classes with Neal due to the whole integration system being destroyed by the wrath of Neal. I see him in the halls all the time, though. You see, the thing about our middle school is that it has multiple buildings, which you have to travel outside to get to. As I mentioned before, Neal possesses lightning speed, which he doesn't display very often. One day, while I am walking to woodshop with my friends, I see something blaze past me, followed by a familiar noise, the lightning raptard's mighty roar. 50 feet behind him is the wrangler, unable to keep up with him. Everybody looks on in shock as Neal plows directly through a small Asian girl carrying her books. As previously stated, Neal doesn't give 2 shits about civilian casualties. Neal looks behind to see how far he is from the wrangler. He silences his roar as he can see he has won. Neal fails to see the glass door directly in front of him, though, and plows through it, just as he did the Asian girl. Neal is out. Tard Wrangler finally catches up and picks up Neal to bring him back to Tard HQ, just as he comes back to consciousness. Neal sees me as he's being carried away.
Hey, pal.
Neal is back, everybody. Be in 6th grade still, only a week left of school. Neal has been rather quiet lately, mainly because me and my friends now let him sit with us at lunch and whatnot, because he has never disrupted anything, and there was always the possibility of Neal unleashing his wrath yet again. So James wasn't near him without Tard Wrangler's supervision often. AI teacher thinks that this is a wonderful idea for us to throw an end-of-the-year party with the Tards. Teacher has no idea of the sequence of events which she has set forth. The party is to be held 3 days before the end of school, and it has to be 80s themed. By the end of the day, I have my hair slicked back and be in a white t-shirt because I'm lazy and unoriginal. The AI class has set up the entire thing: soda, candy, food, music, and whatnot. I talk to my friends as we wait for the Tards to enter. The Tards make their entrance into the gymnasium where this is being held. Most of the Tards look, well, retarded. Neal is dressed up as Michael Jackson. He looks fucking badass. Neal walks over to us. Everybody says hi.
Hey, pal.
Neal seems a bit off today, though. Lots of energy. Turns out Neal skipped off on his meds today. Not a very good thing. Neal equals ticking time bomb of raptardness. James walks over to us. I can already sense his bad intentions.
Hey, Gabo, what's up?
Neal just stares at him in a way I've never seen before.
What's wrong with Neal?
Neal drops his soda on the ground. Oh shit, minorities.jpg. Neal walks away. Wait, what? James shouts after him.
You gonna cry, Gabo?
Neal walks behind one of the curtains in the gymnasium. Nothing can be seen in the darkness over there. A minute later, Neal appears all the way across of the gym on top of the stage we had in there. He is completely naked, underwear and all. Aside for the single white glove that Michael wears. Engage Raptard Screech, the Tard Rage Invoker. The Tard's Frenzy. The downy Tard from my original story kicks over the stereo. Kids just wanna have fun. It continuously plays that single part of the song. There are no wranglers around to subdue the Tards, and the Tard Rage ensues. Neal jumps off the stage and charges James. James is tackled to the ground by the naked Neal.
Get off me, Gabo!
Neal proceeds to rub his chode-like, uncircumcised penis all over James's neck and chest. The roar has stopped.
Who's the Gabo now, James?
Oh god, the sight was amazing. The Tards run out of the gymnasium crying and screaming, now that they can think straight since the screech has ended. The only people left in the gymnasium are me, the teacher, and my friends looking at Neal wipe his phallus all over James's face. Neal gets up off of James. His deed has been done. He proceeds to get dressed again. Just as he finishes, the Tard Wranglers finally arrive. Too late, bros. The teacher retells things that had ensued, and they walk over to carry Neal and James out. Neal walks up to me and hands me a quarter for no apparent reason. As he is being carried away, Neal looks to be just as peaceful as he always is, because he did not give a single fuck. He never did, and he never will. Neal waves as they exit through the double doors and screams,
Bye, pal.
I wave back at Neal, as it is the last time I'll see him for over a year. Bye, Neal. I still have that quarter. Neal, Clash of the Tards Part 2. Be in the last marking period of 7th grade. Neal has been quiet for a while now because the principal claims that he will not deal with the same stuff the grade school did. Neal don't give a fuck, but he is inactive for a while. My classes no longer have a Tard day, so I don't get to see Neal as often. To my luck, my lunch has moved to the same period as all the Tards. Neal starts sitting with us again, with the blessing of his Tard Wrangler. Everything is going fine, and then I see somebody walking over to us that looks familiar. Oh shit, nigger.jpg. It's James in all of his dickishness. He has started to grow a pedophile-esque mustache. Tard got held back in Tard classes. He's a foot behind Neal, just breathing.
Why you guys let Gabo like Neal sit with you?
I calmly tell him to go away as I don't want to start any trouble.
I stay if you want.
Proceed to ignore him. Frustrated by nobody giving a fuck about him, he pushes Neal out of his seat and sits in it. Hey James, that wasn't very nice. Let Neal sit down again.
No, Neal is a Gabo.
Neal has had enough of this shit. Commence the rap Tard screech. A new lot of Tards have yet to feel the wrath of Neal's screech rattle through their brains, making them ultra-sensitive. Tards all rage. Food is thrown. It happened to be hot dog day. Tiny meat penis replicas were flying everywhere. Neal picks up a hot dog and starts smacking him in the chest with it. Neal picks up a hot dog and starts smacking him in the neck and chest with it, while simultaneously screeching directly into James's ear. Kinda reminded me of Neal rubbing his dick on James's chest. The Wranglers are almost done restraining the raging Tards and are about to move on to Neal and James. Neal sees this and goes in for the finisher. He raises his hand, just as he did in the first clash of the Tards. Falcon punch charging. Just as the last of the raging Tards is restrained, Neal hits James's nuts as if he were trying to kill all of the little Jameses that are stored up in there. James fades out in the pain. Neal silences his screech, sits down, and eats the hot dog he had just rubbed all over James. The Tard Wranglers finally arrive and carry them both off to HQ, as the cafeteria watches in awe. Neal looks as if nothing is wrong. He simply waves at me and utters that familiar slur of words.
Bye, pal.
Score, Neal 2, James 0. Neal and the new special ed teacher. Be in 8th grade now, first marking period. Old special ed teacher quit for personal reasons. I personally think she couldn't handle the wrath of Neal. This year there's a special class you can take if you're interested in using a period of your day to help the Tards. Obviously I signed up in order to be with Neal more, so that I could make sure and see if any more hilarity ensues. I walk into Tard HQ that day and there's a new teacher. She's young, seems to really enjoy what she is doing. Everything looks as if it has been going well for the day. Her day is about to take a very unexpected turn for the worse. I am sitting down on the carpet with Neal, helping him read a book on Dr. Seuss. This kid really fucking loves his Dr. Seuss. Neal doesn't understand what half the words mean, so I do my best to help him by explaining the meanings. We come across a word that neither of us know. Neal thinks that I am only not telling him because I want him to figure it out for himself, which I did sometimes just because I felt like it was better for him than me just telling him. Neal is starting to get very frustrated, and for the first time it is directed at me, not somebody else. Oh God, please help me, .jpg. I do my best to calm him down, but he is stuck on the thought that I know what it means. Neal engages the mighty rap Tard burst roar. For you new guys in here, he does this when he's about to wreck shit. I am going to die. It didn't matter that I was half foot taller than him, I was scared shitless. Everybody except for the teacher knows what is about to happen. They just watch on as horror as there is nothing they can do. Teacher runs over thinking she can help. Bad idea. Neal engages Rap Tard Screech. enraging his tarred brethren. James is on the floor pissing himself. The others are throwing shit at each other in the utter rage that the Neal screech invokes. The teacher gets hit with a stapler traveling at speeds previously unseen by man. KO. Neal now turns towards me and stops his screech momentarily to talk.
Tell me what it mean, Pill.
In desperation, I tell him it's a bad word that nobody is supposed to say. Neal believes me entirely. He goes the rest of his life, as far as I know, convinced that acumen is just as bad of a word as fuck. All of his anger immediately disappears. He gives me that toothy grin and simply sits back down as if I had just shared some secret with him. I sit down next to him and he whispers,
Don't worry, I won't tell anyone what acumen means.
Okay, Neal. Tard wranglers burst through the door. One carries Neal, the other carries the new teacher to the nurse's office. As Neal is exiting Tard HQ, his toothy grin remains.
Bye, Pill.
She has no idea what the fuck she is getting into. Neal brings his pet turtle to school. Be in 8th grade still in the first marking period. The new teacher thinks that it would be a wonderful idea for people to bring in things to show the class. Every day it's a different student. Today that student happens to be Neal. He brings in his pet turtle, Jimmy, to show the class. Everything seems to be going well for the show and tell. Neal is passing around the turtle for people to hold. I mean, it's a fucking turtle, what could happen, right? Seeing as nothing that good is going on, I leave and go to the bathroom. Take a piss in what was probably 3 minutes. It was a very long piss. I walk back into the classroom and utter chaos has ensued. Neal is screaming, Jimmy, Jimmy, where are you? As one of the tards is crying in the corner. I'm assuming Neal let loose a short screech for a second to get everyone's attention. The turtle was gone, apparently. He was lost among all the handing him around. Do you hear me? They lost a fucking turtle. I run up to Neal and ask him what's wrong.
Jimmy is gone.
Okay, Neal, calm down. I'll find Jimmy. I start looking around. I search fucking everywhere. The turtle is nowhere to be found. All of a sudden, that fucker James walks in. He's got a big retard grin on his face, and he has been gone since right after I left. Neal immediately catches on and commences the tard screech. Shit goes from chaos to pure clusterfuck in seconds. Not only is Jimmy the fucking turtle gone, now I have a raging mob of tards in a close space. I scream to James over all of the noise. Where is Jimmy?
My ears hurt.
Jimmy is now crying and is of no use. I see a sliver of green in the back of the classroom in the corner of my eye. I investigate the sight. It is Jimmy the fucking turtle halfway under a beanbag. He was there the entire time. I pick him up and present him to Neal, who is overcome with happiness to have Jimmy back.
Jimmy, thanks, Pill.
The new teacher still isn't able to handle shit, and she is sitting in the corner of the room. Neal's screech may have stopped, but the tard rage hasn't. A tard finds the stapler yet again, and boom, it connects with Mrs. Springer while breaking the sound barrier. Out cold. Tard wranglers burst into the room and subdue the tards. Neal is perfectly fine, so he is left in Tard HQ this time, but apparently it was my fault Jimmy was lost. I am dragged out by the principal who accompanied the wranglers. The last thing I see is Neal, there sitting in the corner with Jimmy.
Bye, Pill.
I got a fucking week of detention. Neal and the secret admirer. So in Neal's class there was one Jody. Jody was above average height, ugly as fuck, half-functioning tard who always wore those fucking berets. She was annoying as fuck. All she would ever do was make blatant lies. And she knew nobody believed her. I mean, she had to. One time she claimed that she was related to Leonardo da Vinci, and she had some stuff autographed by him. And she's fucking Irish, but I digress. So it turns out that she secretly had a crush on Neal. I found this out in a rather frightening way, though. One day during gym was the only class integrated, I was cornered by Jody and her nasty fucking odor. Seriously, the girl didn't know how to use deodorant. I swear her stench could counteract Saddam's mustard gas. So she cornered me in the gym and whispered in my ear,
Pill, you're friends with Neal, right?
Yeah, what about it?
Do you think he might like me?
I immediately ducked under her arm and ran to the safety of my decent-smelling friends. Later that day, I saw Neal and asked him if he liked Jody.
Jody is gross, she smells like Jimmy's pee.
I laughed and dropped the subject, because it would obviously never happen. As I left the Tard HQ to go to my next class, I was cut off by Jody.
So what did he say, Phil?
Sorry, he doesn't like you.
What?
Oh shit, not again, .jpg. Jody runs over to Neal at the pace of a muscular dystrophy child. She begins screaming in some kind of high-pitched tone, almost like her own Raptard roar, but nowhere near the magnitude of Neal's. Neal takes this as a challenge and unleashes the most mind-deafening Raptard screech I have yet heard. Jody is cut off mid-scream. The power of Neal's is just overwhelming. The Tards go batshit instantly. It was as if World War Tard had hit the Tard HQ. Miss Springer is now a little better at handling the situation, but she is nowhere near capable of handling this. This time she has the common sense to get under the desk before the stapler and her head have a collision that rivals the power of the Haiti earthquakes. I try to calm Neal down, but it is futile. The Tard Wranglers finally arrive before the Tards reach full-on Hulk mode and are able to restrain them. Neal stops his screech, seeing that the situation no longer requires it as Jody is subdued. The Wranglers pick him up and carry him out of Tard HQ yet again. I wave at Neal as he is carried out the door, peaceful, as he is every time it happens.
Bye, Phil.
Chronicles of Neal. The staplers are coming. Be in 8th grade still. Be 3rd marking period now. Neal and I have just been chilling for quite some time in class. Nothing terrible has happened in a while. I started to think that I would never see the wrath of Neal again. LOL, think again. Neal had recently gotten his first cell phone. His parents bought it for him so they could keep tabs on him better and whatnot. Neal loved the new phone and texted me frequently. As far as I know, I'm the only one he texted. So while we were sitting in class one day, the teacher actually attempted to teach the Tards something. Neal sent me a text saying hi. Mrs. Springer saw him send this message, unfortunately. She made the very terrible mistake of taking Neal's shitty cell phone. Neal didn't take this too kindly. In fact, he took it terribly. As soon as she took it out of his hand, he let out a Raptard screech so fearsome, it made Mrs. Springer drop his phone. At this point, Neal thought she had broke his phone and went into full-on rage mode. I made no attempts to calm him down because she had brought this upon herself. The Tards ran rampant. It was as if Neal was Lion Tard and he was leading his army of Tards against Miss Springer. All he needed was the blue face paint. The Tards commenced their attack on everything within their reach. The very same Tard as the previous time was in reach of the stapler, and this time Miss Springer wasn't smart enough to hide under her desk. The Tard grabbed the stapler and hurled it with all of his might. When it connected with Miss Springer, it was as if Chernobyl had just happened in her head, and she was down for the count. 1, 2... Why even bother? She was fucking out. Now that it appeared as if someone had suffered extreme head trauma, I figured I might as well help a little. Turns out that Neal's phone was fine, the battery just fell out. I put it back in and handed it to him as he returned to his realm of not giving a fuck about the damage he had caused. Turns out Neal was leaving early that day, so he bailed before the Tard Wranglers even got there to clean up the mess. Neal just walks out the door, looking at his phone, and simultaneously waving to me behind him.
Bye, Phil.
See ya, Neal. Don't fuck with Neal's shit. Clash of the Tards Part 3. Be in 8th grade. Be in 4th marking period now. Shit has been far from smooth for Neal lately. As I said before, he destroyed some bitch recently and wasn't sparing a single fuck to give about it. Because of this, Tard Wrangler has been paying close attention to Neal, trying to prevent him from getting into any more trouble. LOL, nice try. During the period that I helped the Tards out, there was a major Tard emergency on the other side of the school. It required all Tard Wranglers, so Neal was left alone for the time being. As soon as the Tard Wranglers were out, someone was walking over to us. It was James the Dickhead. no doubt approaching to start shit with Neal. Neal was playing the Pac-Man free trial on his phone, and could not give a shit about anything else going on. James is now standing directly in front of us.
Hey, Phil, why are you always with Neal?
James, just please leave. Go read something.
But I want to see what Neal is doing. What you doing, Neal?
Neal is completely focused on the Pac-Man game, and nothing else. James grows angry that Neal won't let him see what he's playing. James grabs the phone from Neal mid-game. As James looks at the phone, all you hear is the womp 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 sound of Pac-Man dying. Bad idea, James. Bad idea. Neal emits the raptard screech as he stares at James with the fury of 1,000 burning midgets. James is now able to resist the screech to an extent, but it is futile nonetheless. His future was set the second he touched Neal's phone. Neal approaches James with very blatant, cruel intentions. When Neal is within striking range, he begins to cock back his leg as far as possible. The Tard Wrangler is now turning the handle of the door. Too late now, though. James's manhood is about to be decimated. Neal unleashes the most powerful kick ever performed by a man. When it collided with James's nuts, it was as if there was a disturbance in the force. James drops, and for a second time now he was throwing up, due to Neal's intentions of making sure his family line ends with him. The Tard Wrangler restrains Neal as fast as possible, although it wasn't needed. Neal has stopped his screech now and is back to his oh-so-blissful state. As he was being yanked out the door, he waves to me.
Bye, Phil.
Got a text 15 minutes later.
Hi, Phil.
People need to learn not to fuck with Neal's shit. Neal versus Barb the Bitch. Be in 8th grade still. Be in the final few months of school before summer starts. Kinda sad that I'm not going to see Neal again for a while. Walking to Tard HQ with Neal in between periods. Neal wasn't paying very much attention as usual. He was just talking and looking down at his feet as if he was mystified by how they allowed him to walk. I see Barb the Bitch walking down the hallway in the corner of my eyes. Barb got this nickname because, well, she's a huge bitch, even to Tards. Since Neal wasn't paying attention, he walks directly into Barb and knocks her onto the ground. He quickly says, "Sorry," and motions to help her up. The bitch smacks his hand out of the way and starts to yell, "Why don't you watch where you're going?" Poor decisions.jpg. Neal takes this as an imminent threat and unleashes his short burst roar, his only warning that he's about to slap someone's shit. Barb continues to yell, "Why are you making that sound, needle dick?" I begin to grow angry with her. "Barb, what the hell's your problem?" Neal just puts his arm in front of me like he's got this. Neal dives for her legs and she topples over. She struggles, but Neal has engaged Raptard's strength. Resistance is futile. He gets into a full mount position on top of her and positions his head directly over hers. The roar has stopped. What.jpg? All that can be heard throughout the hall is the sound of phlegm being drawn up in someone's throat. It's Neal. He slowly lets the nastiest loogie I've ever seen drip out of his mouth and directly onto her forehead. It seeped onto her forehead and then down the sides of her head. Barb proceeded to cry and gag so hard that she was choking. Neal sees this as a sign that he has won and releases her from his Tard strength grapple. He says, "Come, Phil," motioning over to Tard HQ. It was as if he had erased the memory from his head entirely, and it was glorious. Neal breaks in the new Wrangler. Be in 8th grade, be about halfway through the year. As I said before, Neal is the lightning raptard. He is fast as hell. Well, he put this particular asset to good use against his new Wrangler. Well, at lunch one day, the new Wrangler wasn't paying much attention. He greatly underestimated the power of Neal. While the dumb fuck was flirting with one of the substitute teachers, Neal slipped the fuck out to go somewhere. Tard Wrangler finally notices and asks me what happened to him. I don't know, it's your job to keep track of him. He runs off down the hallway. I follow out of curiosity. We go out to the main walkway. Neal is nowhere to be found, but his pants are on top of the trash can. We hear a scream come from the building we were just in. Turns out Neal had scared some of the girls walking down the hall. Neal has now been running around for a good 15 minutes straight at full speed. This would be hard for anyone to maintain. Neal is found by the two of us. The Tard guards grab him by the wrist and pull him towards the bathroom to put his pants back on. Neal mumbles,
"I don't feel so good."
Neal engages Tard-Fu grip on the Tard guard's wrist. It is well-known fact that Tard-Fu grip is unbreakable. Neal tries to free his wrist, to no avail. Neal throws up that day's lunch he had. Pizza, fries, and juice, all over the Wrangler's pants and shoes. He sighs in disgust and tosses Neal into the bathroom. Neal begins his Tard screech due to the excessive force used on him. Thankfully, no Tards were nearby to rage. I help calm Neal down, and he tells the principal that the Wrangler hurt him. Wrangler is ultimately fired a week later for this, all 'cause he is a dumb fuck. Don't flirt with substitutes when you should be watching Neal. They aren't even hot. Neal vs. Tard Wrangler Part 2. Be in 8th grade still. Be almost the end of the year, only a month or so left. School has decided to try Tard integration again. Bad idea. Neal has now been assigned a much more seasoned Tard Wrangler. He has his eyes on Neal at all times. Neal fucking hates him even more than the last. Just so turns out that I got Neal integrated into my woodshop class. Woodshop teacher is old, fat man with a large white beard who does not deal with any shit at all due to the possible dangers of his class. Why they let Tards into woodshop, I will never know. Tard Wrangler is only allowed to watch from outside the classroom as to not disturb the class. Be learning how to make a shelf. Required to use jigsaw. Neal goes to use jigsaw, completely disregards all safety precautions. Woodshop teacher sees this and shits a brick, runs over to Neal shouting, "What the hell do you think you're doing? Did you ignore everything I said? Get out of here!" Neal's eyes light up with fury at the woodshop teacher's showing of aggression. Engage Raptard Roar short burst mode. I prepare for shit to get wrecked. Woodshop has yet to encounter Neal and has no idea what the fuck is going on. He continues to shout aggressively. "What the hell are you doing, kid? I said get out!" Neal has had enough of Santa Claus's shit. Neal tosses the hunk of wood at the old man at full force. It connects with his head, with the power of 12 large Hadron colliders. Santa is out cold. The seasoned Tard Wrangler sees this and immediately jumps into action. He runs directly at Neal and lunges for him, too slow for the lightning Raptard. Neal avoids it and runs for the door. Wrangler saw this coming and locked the door after he came in. Neal begins to panic. He has never faced a Wrangler this good. Wrangler begins to corner Neal. Neal senses that his defeat is imminent. He silences his Raptard roar as the Wrangler closes in. He shouts at the Wrangler, "Acumen!" referring to acumen, what he thought was a word equivalent to fuck due to a previous encounter. The Wrangler picks up Neal and prepares to bring him to Tard HQ. Neal has stopped his resistance entirely. For once, someone has bested Neal. What is happening? .jpg. Neal just waves to me and utters that familiar slur of words. "Rape you." Neal vs. Tard Wrangler Part 3, Neal's Revenge. Be in 8th grade still. Be about a week after the previous incident. Surprisingly, the school has kept the whole Tard integration thing going. Neal has had it up to his head, only 5 feet, with his new Tard Wrangler's shit. He refuses to give him even an inch of space, not even during lunch when Neal chills with me and my friends. Neal has been planning this. He had to have. Something so elaborate could not have simply come out of thin air, even for Neal. Neal waits until lunch to unleash his wrath. Remember, all of the Tards eat lunch at the same time with all of the regular kids. Be eating lunch happens to be taco day. Neal, out of the blue, unleashes the most violent of his Raptard screeches I have ever heard. Da fuck.jpg. Neal was unprovoked, and I was very confused as he did not let me in on his plan. Tards start to go batshit crazy. Meat, rice, and cheese is soaring over our heads. I duck down as to avoid the carnage, but continue to watch Neal. The seasoned Tard Wrangler starts his approach to apprehend Neal. Not happening, bro. Neal fucking books it using his lightning Raptard speed, all the way to the other side of the cafeteria in milliseconds. Tard Wrangler picks up speed in order to keep pace with Neal, but stops paying attention to the ground. Neal has started to remove his clothes by now. Tard Wrangler's foot hits a pile of taco meat that has been thrown by the raging Tards and does a cartoon-style slip right onto his back. now covered in taco ingredients. Neal has completed the process of undressing. He's letting his uncircumcised penis hang for everyone to see. Neal begins to charge the Tard Wrangler. The students look on in horror to the events unfolding before their very eyes, but they could not fathom what was going to happen. Continuing his mighty rap-tard screech, Neal dives on top of the Wrangler. Engaged hard strength. Even the full-grown Wrangler is not able to fight off Neal's immense tard strength. Neal silences his rap-tard screech and scoops up the stray taco meat ingredients, shoving them directly into his mouth. He chews it all into a half-digested puree. He's gonna do it, .jpg. He positions his head directly above the Wranglers, just as he had to Barb the bitch earlier that year, and regurgitates this taco spit puree onto the face of the Wrangler. Neal has had his revenge and sees no reason to continue the onslaught. He gets off of the disoriented, taco-covered Wrangler and gets dressed once again. The raging mob of tards have almost all been subdued by the other Tard Wranglers. Neal is picked up by one Wrangler and dragged towards the cafeteria exit, as another tends to the seasoned Tard Wrangler's wounds. Neal is in complete harmony. He simply waves goodbye to me and shouts in my direction, "Bye, pal," all the while holding a very toothy grin because he knows he has broken the Super Wrangler. Nobody is free from the wrath of Neal. This is the last story. Neal, story of the Tard Ball game. Be in 8th grade, be in last 2 weeks finally. Miss Springer has organized a baseball game for the Tards and all the kids who help them for that one period a day. Poor choices, Mang. B-day of event. Walk up to Neal, who is sitting on home plate. You ready for the game, bud?
Hey, pal.
Turns out Neal doesn't like baseball very much. James walks up to Neal and I before the game commences.
I'm gonna kick your butt, Gabo.
Neal doesn't give a fuck as usual, and I simply disregard the Tard. All he wants to do is sit there in the outfield until this shit is over, but he has taken a liking to the batting part. Be Neal's turn to bat. Miss Springer is pitching underhand to all the Tards. She has obviously underestimated Neal's power despite her previous encounters. Miss Springer throws the ball. Neal misses his first swing. I hear James from over on second base.
Haha, you Gabo, you're bad.
She tosses the ball a second time and Neal misses yet again. James feels it necessary to continue taunting Neal.
Told you it's bad, you Gabo.
Neal has had enough of this shit. Serious face. .jpg. Miss Springer tosses the ball to Neal a third and final time. Neal hits the fucker with all of his strength. It was as if the spirit of Babe Ruth had been reincarnated into a Tard. The ball blazed straight towards James with the speed of 1,000 blazing niggers. Oh shit. .jpg. Boom, the ball cracks against his skull. Sweet dreams, James. He's out fucking cold. Miss Springer is now having a fucking breakdown. I personally think she should be praising God that the speeding object did not hit her for once. She begins to shout at Neal. Why do you always have to cause trouble? Neal does not like being yelled at. Neal, taking the sign of aggression to heart, commences his mighty rap-tard screech. The shitstorm is upon us. The Tards run rampant. They have been consumed in rage. Tards are ramming other Tards with their heads while wearing batting helmets. Others are throwing the balls at the helpers at near Mach 2 speed due to their Tard strength. Thank God there was only one bat, and it was possessed by Neal. Tard Wranglers jump into action. Despite being seriously under-equipped, they put up a good fight. The Tardpocalypse was going on directly in front of me, and I got front row seats. Chubby Tard from my original story, who was KO'd by the door, now has on a batting helmet and can obviously not be affected by head injury. He charges Miss Springer with his mighty Tardnoceros stampede. The mighty Tardnoceros hits Miss Springer with the combined tackling power of Ray Lewis and Lawrence Taylor. Down for the count. Neal has won his battle and ceases his rap-tard screech. The Tards are almost entirely wrangled by now, and the Wrangler begins to approach Neal to restrain him. Neal has no intention of putting up a fight. He is now content that he has had his revenge. As Neal is carried back to Tard HQ by the Wrangler, he waves back towards me at the baseball field.
Bye, pal.
See you tomorrow, Neal. Niggas ain't got shit on Neal's athleticism.